The following is based off a true story and a true case. Every now and then, my thoughts drift towards the death of Lela and Raymond Howard. When that happens, a multitude of questions usually start to plague my mind. What could have prevented their demise? Did they suffer? How many chances to save them were wasted? How many warning signs were ignored? But what really pains me to not know is, how did it all end? On Sunday, June 29th, 1997, elderly couple Lela and Raymond Howard from Furtun, Texas, decided to go to a day festival in Tampa, a nearby town. It was to be a 15-mile trip, and Lela was driving. The couple departed that morning despite early objections from Lela's son, who had begged to drive his mother and father himself instead. Lela declined, saying, "No, we know where to go. We go every year." Lela's son's concerns stemmed from the fact that his 83-year-old mother was showing signs of Alzheimer's disease and was often easily confused at things. At one time, Lela even meant to show up at the local Walmart for morning coffee at 10:30 in the morning, but instead arrived at 10:30 p.m., perplexed at why the sun was not yet up. 88-year-old Raymond, too, was showing signs of mental deterioration due to his recent brain surgery done to combat a stroke and a head injury. Lela and Raymond, though, were not aware of their own severe mental decline and left for the festival that morning without even telling their own adult son, who lived just next door. The afternoon passed, and the Howards didn't return home. However, at a local Walmart in Tampa, a greeter there remembered seeing Lela and Raymond coming in the coffee during that afternoon. 3 days later, on Wednesday, July 2nd, a newspaper article was published in the Austin American Statements about a missing couple, titled, "Elderly Solano Couple Missing on the Road Trip to Nowhere." It reads, Lela and Raymond Howard are on the 4-day road trip into thin air. The Central Texas couple in their 80s with diminishing health somehow have turned a 15-mile journey for a cup of coffee and a party into a 500-mile plus misadventure with no unknown destination. That same day, a deputy in Aurora, Arkansas pulled over Lela for driving with her headlights off, and it was nighttime. Lela and Raymond around 500 miles away from their original starting point in Furtun, Texas. The deputy later noted that Lela was polite, gentle, and acted just like my grandmother. When Lela stated that they were trying to get back to Texas, the deputy noted that they were heading in the wrong direction if they were trying to return to that state. So he gave them directions. The deputy then asked Lela where she lived, but she couldn't remember. He let them off with only a warning. The couple were pulled over about a half an hour later for driving with their high beams on. This deputy also let them go. Neither of the deputies knew about the newspaper article, nor did that Howard were missing people. The Howards once again disappeared. The next day, Thursday, July 3rd, there was another article about the Howards. They had allegedly been spotted in a farmer's market in Arkansas, and the authorities in 11 states were on the lookout for them. One Friday, July 4th, another article stated the authorities have narrowed their search into 3 specific counties in Arkansas. There were no further developments in the search until Wednesday, July 9th, when the couple's story was covered in the CBS Morning News Show. Yet another newspaper article was published about the Howards in the Austin American Statements, marking the front page. The article's editor, Dennis Camino, stopped by the Howards' house, and the signs of the couple's mental decay were obvious. They were folded clothes still laying on the bed, and if they had started packing for some sort of long trip. The televisions were unplugged, and hearing aids were left behind in the bathroom, as well as various toiletries. Even though the month was currently July, the Howards' calendar was still on the page for February. Perhaps most notably, the Howards' cat Happy was left behind, essentially abandoned. The couple's children and grandchildren were apparently unaware of how bad their parents' mental health had become. The search intensifies as authorities employed dozens of deputies, carefully combined obscure back roads and brush areas, posted flyers, and questioned many civilians over the large area. Helicopters were even later used in the search, and the investigation area grew to 1,000 miles from Saladon, Texas. By then, one of the Howard's grandsons offered a reward of $1,000 for his grandparents' safe return. Tips have come flooded in after the CBS morning show, but none led to the Howard's discovery. The next day, on Thursday, July 10th, one of the Howard's grandchildren remarked of the newspaper article, "The hardest part is thinking that they are suffering and we can't help them." Another blankly stated, "I just don't think we're gonna find them alive now." Unfortunately, everyone's worst fears were finally realized on Saturday, July 12th, when the bodies of Lela and Raymond Howard were discovered in their car by hikers at the bottom of a 25-foot cliff, just outside Hot Springs, Arkansas. Raymond was still in the passenger seat, but Lela was about 200 feet away in the ravine, still clutching her purse and car keys. Apparently, after the car went over the cliff, she put it in park, turned off her headlights, opened the passenger side door for her deceased husband, and crawled away to die of her injuries sustained in the crash. There were no skid marks found on the top of the cliff, indicating that Lela's car had driven straight off the edge. A crash scene investigator estimated that the car had been going around 50 miles per hour on the stretch of road leading up to the cliff. Lela likely didn't see the cliff edge or was in some other way distracted, or even became momentarily confused and lost the ability to safely drive. It is not known to how long the Howard's body remained undiscovered. Sadly, the crash site where Lela and Raymond's body were found was within the zone previously searching by the authorities. But searchers could not see the bottom of the cliff due to excess brushes in their line of sight. Lela and Raymond were later buried next to their respective first spouses. Austin, Texas songwriter Tony Scalzo read the July 2nd newspaper article in Austin American Statements, and in the midst of the search for Lela and Raymond, it became inspired. He wrote a song with an alternative rock band, Fastball, based on Lela and Raymond's disappearance. It was titled The Way. About the song, Scalzo said, "It is a romanticized take on what happened." Scalzo pictured them taking off to have fun, like the day when they first met. Scalzo wrote the song before the Howard's bodies were discovered. The album contained The Way, All the Pain Money Can Buy, was released in 1998, 1 year after the Howard's bodies were found. Despite The Way's cheerful, optimistic sound, the lyrics were haunting. They made up their minds and they started packing. They left before the sun came up that day, and an exit of eternal summer slackened, but where they are going without even knowing the way. They drank up the wine and they got to talking, and now they have more important things to say. And where the car broke down, they started walking, where they were going without even knowing the way. Anyone can see the road that they walk on, it's paved in gold, and it's always summer. They'll never get cold. They'll never get hungry. They'll never get old and gray, and you can see their shadows wandering off somewhere. They won't make it home, but they really don't care. They wanted the highway. They're happier there today. Today. Their children woke up and they couldn't find them. They left before the sun came up that day. They just drove off and left it all behind them. But where they are going without even knowing the way. My thoughts again return to Lela and Raymond Howard barreled off the cliff in Arkansas. Unfortunately, I never seemed to get any answers to my questions. Maybe Lela has seen the cliff edge, but didn't have enough time to react. I wonder if she even had the mental functionality to function anymore. It leaves me thinking, what was going through their heads as their car plunged off the cliff edge? Fear? Confusion? I like to think otherwise. Perhaps in that moment, it wasn't 1997 anymore. Maybe it was a bunch of earlier times for them. Maybe their damaged psyche spared them from the sad reality. Perhaps in that moment for Lela and Raymond, there were no more medications, no more hearing aids, and no more doctor's appointments. No arching, no aching joints, no glasses, no operations, no pacemakers, no forgetting, and no more confusion. Maybe in that moment, for their entire trip, Lela and Raymond saw themselves as a newlywed couple, their young skin perpetually gleaming in the summer sun, Lela in her best white wedding dress and Raymond in his finest black tuxedo. Maybe they envisioned a just married sign hanging on the back of their rear window and empty soup cans tied on their rear bumpers. I wonder if they had held hands. Maybe when Lela and Raymond Howard drove off the cliff in Arkansas in 1997, they weren't scared. Maybe they were smiling.